Before I begin this review, two shoutouts for a second. I was on a podcast last night discussing the most anticipated and least anticipated films for the rest of this year on the channel Diego Coya. I'll leave the link down in the description below. And also, I am up for a couple rewards. A couple of my friends put together the award show, the Network Awards. There's a link in there. If you want to vote for me, you can for certain categories. There's a bunch of other categories that you can vote for too. I'll leave it all down there. Let's go on with the review. Detroit is a new film based on the very true 1967 Detroit riots. This movie is directed by Kathryn Bigelow of Hurt Locker and Zero Dark 30 and Point Break fame. And this movie is really separated into three acts. The first act is really more of the introduction to the whole thing, getting you immersed. The second act takes place entirely at the Algiers Hotel, what happened there with the cops and these black people. And the third act is really set after the Algiers Hotel, the courtroom setting of it all. And I was looking forward to seeing this movie. Kathryn Bigelow, I think, has a lot of talent. I think Hurt Locker is a tad bit overrated, but Point Break, I think, is a really good movie. So I was really interested to see what she was going to do to handle this film, and I really dug this movie. This movie just grabs you and never really lets you go for a long time. The first two acts more specifically, because those two acts are really getting you into the riots. Like, you're in a lot of them, and also when you get to the Algiers Hotel, that's really where the story is really centered at. You really get immersed through there. A lot of that is through the documentary, like cinematography and kind of editing, which was really good. It's a really good way to help you as the audience member feel like you are with these people, especially with how these people look too. Like, a lot of them, they look tired. Performance-wise, they look like they're exhausted. Some of them are really sweaty. And for the longest time, I got transported into the film. I almost forgot that Will Fulcher was actually playing the main cop character. I even forgot that John Boyega was playing the character he did. I just saw these guys as real people. And that's a really good credit to director Kathryn Bigelow and also the cast of this movie. Without their performances and without her direction, it could have just felt like a Hollywood basic kind of retelling with all these big stars, because there is a couple big stars in this movie, but because of their execution of everything, it feels like you are watching something true, because it is true, but they actually made it seem like you were watching the actual true thing. Which is pretty surprising, because an end text at the end of the movie says certain things had to be changed because we don't have like every single detail. So seeing this movie and knowing that there's a couple things that are changed, I honestly have no idea what they could be, because there's just so much dark and depressing going on. It's a hard watch for sure. There's a couple sequences where I might think maybe that could have been changed, but no, that can't be, because that seems like it would have happened. Even though they say certain things were changed, when you're watching the movie, it feels like everything that happened, you know? So I guess that would be pretty interesting to watch again and know which ones were the changed scenes. I think that would be a really interesting rewatch. But there is a lot of crushing things going on in this film. A lot of it takes place at the Algiers Hotel, which is one of the best like horror scenes of this entire year. And I do mean horror, because this isn't technically a horror movie, but it kind of is at the Algiers Hotel. There's just so much just wrong and bad going on there. And I have to give credit to three people. Two of them are Jack Rayner and another actor. They play two of the cops. They were really good in this movie. They really sold me on who they were as people. But Will Poulter in this movie, he is best supporting actor worthy. He really is. He plays this racist asshole extremely well. I did not see Will Poulter in this movie. He completely changed. He was a brand new person. That's how great he was in this movie. Seriously, I know it's August, and there's still some more movies to come out, but this guy needs a Best Supporting Actor nomination, because he's one of those rare actors who can actually make you kind of forget that he is Will Poulter and he was in Narnia and The Maze Runner. And especially after seeing those kinds of movies like Narnia, Maze Runner, seeing him do this, that is extremely impressive that he's had this performance locked away all these years. And I know that originally he was supposed to play the new Pennywise in the new It movie. I guess maybe he was doing this one and he dropped out of that. If they kept him for Pennywise, he would have been perfect. Honestly, I'm looking forward to what Bill Skarsgård's doing, but I kind of want to see Will Poulter as Pennywise now, because he is terrifying. And there's even certain shots that are set up kind of like a horror movie, like when the cops are actually showing up to the Algiers Hotel. That was honestly like really tension-filled. And also there's one shot where two characters are trying to make an escape, and they see like maybe down this hallway there's their exit, but then a policeman shows up and they're like, oh god, they gotta keep running. Like that was like straight out of a horror movie. And John Boyega as an actor deserves a lot of credit for this role too, because his performance is kind of complicated. Because he's working with the police, he's obviously more on their side, and they're looking for the shooter. They thought they heard a gun at the Algiers Hotel, so he's going to investigate, but while he's witnessing these extremely bad cops mess with these people, like he has to be angry about it, but he has to cover that up because he has to fit in with the rest of the police. That is tough. It was kind of tough seeing him have to watch this at a lot of times. His performance was really good. And there's two characters at the Algiers Hotel. I guess you could say they're more of the main characters of this situation. There's one of them is a singer from the Dramatics, and one of them helps out with their band. Those two, seeing how they interacted with each other and what it was like to go through it with those two, it was depressing, really. It almost brought a tear to my eye, especially seeing how certain things went down. I won't spoil it in case you aren't aware of the actual true event, but it is, it's heartbreaking. That's honestly the best way to describe this movie, as heartbreaking. There's a lot of stuff going on here that will just, it's gonna crush your soul. And some people might complain that the first act of the movie, it feels a little too long, and I could kind of see that at first. The introductory act, as I like to call it, basically placing you in the riots, like getting to know certain characters that will eventually meet up at the Algiers Hotel. After seeing where the first act would lead into the second act, and seeing how these people come together, it made sense as to why they did the introduction act the way they did. Could they have shortened it, like while they're having some white text explaining everything? Could they have had some clips of the actual riots and then drop off at the Algiers Hotel situation? Maybe they could have done that, but I really appreciate the extra time they took to actually flesh it out more and get you more immersed. Because the next, like, an hour and 45 minutes is just so brutal and intense that you really do need to feel like you are there in order to get the true impact of it all, and that is really impressive. The third act, though, is where they kind of drop off a little bit, and it's for a couple reasons. Number one is that the first two acts are just so intense and riveting, and you're in, and then as soon as the third act kicks in, it kind of drops off a little bit. It's not as intense, and it makes sense because now they're in a courtroom setting. Of course, the tone has to change from, violence and intensity to just, we have to deal with the legal matters now. So it makes sense why they would have that kind of tonal change, but number two, I think they kind of rushed through the kind of courtroom setting way too quickly. I think they should have taken their time a little bit on it. If this movie had to go over 3 hours just for that, honestly, I think I would have been fine with it, because courtroom settings can be very interesting. And in this case, you have these police officers. Their situation is kind of complicated, and seeing how the trial goes about, after watching it, I just felt like, I wish that they actually spent a little bit more time talking about how they're going to do this, or what they're going to specifically say to try to get off free. I just thought because of the complexity of the situation of the people on trial, that maybe fleshing out that courtroom setting more actually would have worked towards this film's favor. Instead, they just kind of rushed through it, and you get why it's in the movie because it actually happened, and you understand the importance of it to the characters, but I just feel like fleshing that out more and seeing how they led to the ending of it would have helped much better. But besides the third act kind of dropping off a little bit, getting a little bit slower, not as good, I still really dug Detroit. It's a movie that I think is important for a lot of people to see. I'm not surprised that this movie didn't do as well financially, but still, it's because the movie itself is about this topic that is hard for a lot of people, I can imagine, so it makes sense, but still I think it's really important for people to see. I'm gonna give Detroit an A-. The first two acts are some of the most riveting stuff you'll ever see this entire year, and even though the third act kind of drops off a little bit, it's not like it's completely bad or anything. The movie as a whole is something that people should be going out to see, and I think Will Poulter definitely needs Best Supporting Actor. I don't know about the movie itself, if it's going to be up for any other Oscars, because as I said, the third act kind of drops off a bit, kind of not makes it a perfect A+ Oscar movie, but Will Poulter for sure. Get him nominated for Best Supporting Actor. He changed for that role for the better. I love Will Poulter. But if you've seen Detroit, leave in the comments below what you thought of it, and as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.